Hey, Ram.
Sasa.
What's
Good to see you. How many years?
Yeah, it's been a while. You
How
doing
are
okay?
you? Kabisa.
Welcome, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And how are things?
it's okay.
You're around.
Yes, I'm around. I'm around most of the time, actually.
So I hope this is a good surprise.
Yeah,
I was told that you two know each other from the days at the University of Nairobi.
Yeah,
KCA.
it's been a long time. Yeah, Bram was supportive early in our journey, so that's good to see.
As well, yeah. And you told me it's been a long time since the two of you had met.
Yeah, we haven't connected in years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been at least maybe
more than
5.
4 years.
Yeah.
5.
4, 5, yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, that's how we talk about COVID these days, pre and post
Pre and
COVID.
post. Great.
Yes,
Yes,
good to
so-
see you. Ben, thanks for bringing us together after
you're
5
very,
years.
You're very welcome. So, Bram, just as a feedback or basically as a thought process of where we are actually, we had spoken about the whole journey that Tesh went through. How he built MarketForce, you know yourself, it started with Mezozi, it turned into MarketForce.
Yeah.
And then how that closed down and the next chapter started. And this is my next podcast guest, by the way. So I thought it would be good to just connect the two of you because one of the thoughts or one of the things that all of us are interested in is how do we build a better ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to just hear, again, your thoughts as well as Primal's thoughts on what can we actually do in order to make it better in Kenya for founders. One of the points that Tesh mentioned, which was very important, is to have capital available as well and have more M&A activity amongst the bigger corporates, because the way they do it, I'm told, is mostly through their own incubator, which then kind of forces a founder's hands to run through that incubator, even though there might be a 5-year-old company who already knows what they're doing. So maybe what are your thoughts on that?
I think we're going through a learning process, and we need to be patient with ourselves, because you find that Africa, we are treated unfairly when it comes to our process of learning. There's very little investment in research and development, very little investment in training. And training is not about putting a bunch of entrepreneurs in a class and teaching them bookkeeping and financing and fundraising and all that stuff. Entrepreneurship can't be taught in school. And that culture has to be allowed to happen. People have to lose money. And trust me, US is a mature economy. You're talking about companies like the crypto company that went with people's close to billions of dollars, all that stuff. And there are some that are fraudulent. There are some is just a natural progression of learning, which entrepreneurs have to go through that journey. And as a matter of fact, the younger entrepreneurs need to be supported more, because then you're talking about 3 or 4 cycles of learning. By the time you're actually getting a business that will become something, it's not a matter of, having a bunch of investors who are on your neck to perform. And you have very little time to even do your sales to hire the right people, because the moment you touch that money is a clicking time bomb. You said you will do this. You said you will do this. So there's no time to grow. There's no time. And as an industry, even the VC, the people investing in Africa, they came up with this thesis 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They're testing their own thesis. And the thesis was pump money into 10 companies, make sure 2 work. It's based on, it's not based on any economics. No. So right now, I think those data points are becoming clear in terms of what does the market really look like? What does the government affect these things? What are the policies changing? Big companies that basically have billion-dollar balance sheets, they still take time before they do proper market. When the campaign selection comes, the market changes. Yeah. The local entrepreneurs have been able to survive that. 7 years, 8 years, you've built a business from nothing. You've been able to push it 7 years and create some type of even employment for 100, 200 people. I think there's some level of reality, and the reality is not about turning eyes on entrepreneurs who have tried to do something and probably it didn't work out as people or as the shareholder expected. If there's fraud, yes, deal with the fraud. If there's mismanagement, then. But there are just some things where entrepreneurs need to be allowed to learn. That has to grow. That has to mature. It's part of the process, and we cannot rush it.
Yeah. In fact, to put it into exact perspective, what he's talking about is like in the markets that have a mature VC ecosystem, there was money in the 90s. That was their first cycle. Then in the 2000s, and then in the 2010s, then in 2020s. That's 4 cycles. Africa, the first VC checks in Africa, maybe 2014, 2015. So if you put it
even way later.
Exactly.
Like
that was like first checks.
First checks, yes.
First checks.
And then everyone
serious
came
checks
at the same time.
Yeah, then 2020 is when like we started seeing. So in real sense, like 5 years, right? So the first cycle has to happen. And if you think about even the successful companies we talk about from globally, they were in probably the second cycle in the 2000s is when they really picked up. And we can see how them becoming big, they're able to support the next generation, do M&As and all these things. Our first cycle is just trying to start to do those things. In fact, the M&As that are happening, the massive ones, are companies in the West acquiring companies in Africa because they have a playbook. Yeah, so I agree with Bram 100%. The ecosystem needs time, and people must respect the process. Yeah.
And the thing about this whole journey of building businesses, there is a painful difference between investment and entrepreneurship. If you want to make money quickly, don't invest in startups. It doesn't work. And if you basically are not an entrepreneurial investor, don't touch an startup. Because at the end of the day, both of you are going to learn. There's no playbook of how to get a startup from $0 to $1 billion. I know we are subjected to building pitch decks that have journeys that show that. But the reality of them, what people are bullshitting each other out here with those things because you need to close. If you don't close, you won't make payroll. And then you have a set of people back of your neck. You have targets and stuff. So it's a survival where there's no playbook. Tesh tomorrow will say, "Oh, I've raised X amount," and people go like, "Yeah, I'll go Tesh," but Tesh will go like, "You have any idea what actually had to go through to get that?" Then once he gets that, then the gun's already turned. He has only a week to just celebrate that, enjoy with the team, but after that.
A week? Isn't that a long time?
You just have to quickly turn around and it's like, okay, guys, so immediately, either you've been given a chairman or a CFO who is not aligned with you. You have to find a way of making what you think and what the metrics and the parameters of the business is. If you want to be a millionaire or a billionaire, if you're not an entrepreneurial investor, don't touch a startup because a startup requires maturity. Half the times as founders, we are people who try to figure it out. We don't know if it's going to work 100%. We have the conviction. We then build the network of people who can advise us, who can invest in us, who can guide us as time goes by. But all of us, we're all trying to figure it out. So, and then at some point, then some of these things work, some of these don't work. Now, the role of governance, somebody will say, okay, what is the role of governance in this whole stuff? Let me put it from a macro point of view. Regulation. Take, for example, regulation. Do you regulate before you innovate, or you innovate, then you regulate? I think it's a balance. And that balance needs to always alternate in terms of if you start with an egg, you will also need to allow the chicken to hatch the egg later. So if you start with the chicken, then you have to allow the process of incubation of the egg. So at any given point, it's an alternating process where the governance should allow for learning and not in the sense that where there's no flexibility. If this is the direction by which money was invested with and you realize it doesn't work, can you change direction? I was involved in business, to just narrow down to the point and give a practical example. In 2016, I was involved in starting a very good business in San Francisco. We came to Africa in Rwanda, 2017, launched this business. Came to Kenya, 2017. Very successful business, backed by a wealthy family office in the US. Abundance of capital. So we moved quickly because of either the network I had and things. We built a robust business. At some point, we needed to scale because of the pressure that came with the capital. We got a $150 million trade line. This $150 million trade line, for us to sustain that trade line, it meant that we had to expand our business rapidly because the cost of capital was pretty high. Now, that meant we started acquiring, in terms of for you to close a client, that means you have to alter your playbook. There are certain due diligence things probably you may not follow through because you're like, okay, we need to close, so we can compromise on X, Y, Z and stuff. Now, the danger with that is then we started seeing things in the business we never used to see, like fraud started coming into the business because we are under pressure to acquire that book value. Like, dude, you have to close. Your targets move from $1 million a month to $5 million a month. It becomes a different conversation. Now, it came to a point where now for the business to survive, we needed to change from a financing business to a technology company. That gives us the mandate to basically solve this risk. That by itself is part of the reason why that company is not as known as it is still operating, but is not as whatever. So I think at some point we all face those things, and I think the ecosystem just needs to be allowed to mature. Let's put up the right governance structures. Let's put up a supportive. It's like having a child. You can love them, you can give them everything, but you need to allow the child to become.
It's always like looking at regulation, right? Over-regulation, from my point of view, is always harmful. It's a bit like the helicopter mothers when you're talking about, children, because you can't do everything. And typically what happens when you over-regulate an economy as well is you're strangling the economy more because you're putting into chains the people who actually want to contribute value and want to create things. While the people who are wanting to misuse the systems, they will always find a way of how to do it.
Yes.
Right? But now maybe asking one different question. Now, briefly, the two of you met under specific circumstances, right? Like at some point of like an incubating or entrepreneurial ecosystem part. How do those play into what we aim at creating here in terms of an ecosystem? How important are they? And again, how do you both feel about what should they do better to actually prepare entrepreneurs for what they're really seeing? Because there's that disconnect, like, sure, you can teach certain things academically that this is roughly what you can expect. But then actually going out there and, as Mike Tyson would say, getting punched in your face is a very different story. So what do you feel can be done in order to make it at least more understandable for the people who are out there who want to start a business?
Yeah, I think I have something just small to say that's really like practical what happened in our case. When I met Bramwell, he was heading innovation at one of the universities. And I'd call it sort of an inter-university competition or award for entrepreneurs. And as among the entrepreneurs at that time was being awarded, and we emerged top in one of the categories. I think it was the technology category, and we got, I think it was about $1,000 then, as the prize that the university was given. I think such initiatives are really good because what they do is, which, for lack of a better word, I'll say they make entrepreneurship sexy, which is important. The reason it's important is because I don't think there's a greater tool, given the unemployment rate in our continent. I don't think there's a greater tool for
you're married now, right?
Sort of yeah, right. So entrepreneurship needs to be. So we see entrepreneurship today, and our parents, if you think about it, like if you told them you need to be an entrepreneur, they'd be like, what is that, But right now, it's called the creator economy. Like you're doing your thing, is appreciated because of the impact it can have. When you have companies employing 50,000, 100,000 people, that's massive impact. But the only way to achieve such outsized returns is building startups. There's no other way. There's no,
It's a great point you're making because, we had this event with Anand Ryan, founder of Mensa Brands, who came from India to visit us here. And what he also kind of resembled was that Indian startup ecosystem, which again is further ahead of us, right?
Yes.
But there was one book I read as well about that startup ecosystem, which said what had to happen as well for that to kind of come about was that the mentality of Indians, and Indians are very, they kind of raise their children, go to university, be a good kid, perform well academically, get a well-paying job, right?
Yes.
That was the old kind of mentality. Now, it's become more acceptable to actually build your company, start a company, and then, get success that way because, like you're saying, it's become sexy. People are looking at entrepreneurs again and saying, hey, these are the people who are bold, they're going out there, they're building something. They're employing people.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about why it's now practical, is you have, I'd say, the first age of entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs in Kenya who we can look up to as a generation. And I can say, look at James Mwangi, who's creating the most jobs in this country. Look at Safaricom. How is this founded? So there's that first generation of those traditional businesses.
Role models.
Role models that have created real massive impact. If you look at Cellulant, for example. And at least now there's examples. And us guys are trying to create the next generation of such. So I'd say top 25, that award was called top 25 under 25 entrepreneurs. And being one of the entrepreneurs honored by that just created a platform to really build, to really show that we're doing something that can be important, So I appreciate that.
And I'm glad that we're actually talking about that. My belief in some of these things, and there are different reasons why we all are starting a startup. And not all reasons are juristic, like we are not always trying to start for good. Some people are starting these companies because they have no alternative. They need a job, and they will do anything to get a job. Some people are just doing it because it's cool. And they don't, like, the moment it starts being a headache, they're like, hey, dude, it's never that serious. And that's it. And some of us, like for me, my inspiration is I have this obsession of trying to contribute in people's lives. In one way or another, I will try and do something. And Tesh has his reasons, and we all have our reasons. Of course, there's what we say because of, the marketing and communication.
The quorum.
The official communication.
The official communication that you have to stick to. But at the end of the day, there is this personal compass that drives you to do what you do. That's one. That simply is the life of a nation. Because that's what actually, before even there is a government strategy of GDP growth or an economic outlook, whatever, the spirit of a nation starts with the inspiration that exists within its people. If that thing is messed up, then it doesn't matter what kind of policies or structures that you have, it's not going to work. If the young generation is inspired for the right reasons to build, they will build. People will basically go on the road and build those roads for the minimum, because what motivates them? But if a bigger percentage of the population is inspired by hunger, you can imagine the kind of stuff that will begin to happen. That's what is happening in the country, because most of the people who can get jobs, entrepreneurship is the only next alternative that comes with it. Yeah. So that's level number one, inspiration. What's its inspiring growth of startups? That's one. The second level is the level, and as much as we're talking about investors and allowing the ecosystem to mature, the entrepreneurs have a responsibility to develop themselves, not just in terms of skill, but value system. And in that sense, but skill, you see something you can go, be taught, be mentored, be coached and all. But value system can't be. Then, in addition to the entrepreneurship, is the entrepreneurship support ecosystem, which is the employees you end up stuff. And your first employees are the people who are either going to make you or break you. And I've seen both sides of the divide. You can hire somebody today and they will be the beginning of your problems. And you can hire somebody today, they can be the beginning of your success. There are some employees who will walk from hell. There are some employees who will be angels. So that ecosystem, in terms of those, first of all, what is inspiring the foundation? and then what is the value system of the entrepreneurs and their perspective in terms of developing themselves. When I first met Tesh, and I remember the first conversation we had, you guys were doing websites and software, which bookkeeping stuff. From there, I have seen Tesh grow. And one of the highlights, behind the scenes, you see Tesh in the Forbes thing, cover, that it's top 30 under 30. And you've seen growth. Because it's not something that you can, because you will get the platform, you'll have to communicate. You can't communicate stuff you communicated when you're doing top 25 under 25. It means there's some level of growth that carries you. So entrepreneurs, there's some level of value system and self-development that founders, it's cool. Yes, you invented what? Like, I'm going to speak here about AI and stuff. Yeah, you're cool and all, but you need to develop yourself so that at least you're trustworthy, you are investable, you know, all those things. Then the ecosystem. Most economies that you will see is it will have a percentage of, okay, let me narrow it down to work ethic. Does the ecosystem that supports entrepreneurship has the right work ethic? I've been in businesses where a good work ethic can drive the business, drive down the cost. Other than trying to hire 10 people, the 5 people are diligent enough to follow through on the few objectives and the business grows. That reduces the cost of running the startup. But then now you find in terms of if the support ecosystem has a bad work ethic from your partners, they're necessarily drag, like let's say you're working a partnership with a corporate. They take 6 months to close, a business. So that technically somebody has to pay.
It's like
but yes, exactly.
They just keep stacking up.
So if you put those 3 things together, and I like the way there are all these theories. Like every week, I think there's somebody influential writing and a synopsis of what's happening to African startups. And I think you see there MarketForce, you see there who. There are all these, records. And even me, I get, for some of the things I've gotten, what's happening to your company. And you're like, I wish, it's not as simple as we're trying to make it. Because it's not a one-person job. It's a community job.
Everything is connected.
Yes. So I think those 3 things, in the sense of how do you inspire your generation of founders to emerge? What's the inspiration? Have you tormented them to be so hungry that the only thing they want to work for is their stomach? That's a problem. What's the different other? And then in terms of the founders, do they have a value system? Do they have the right support infrastructure? If the support infrastructure is just hungry people want to make money, that's a problem. The work ethic of the support infrastructure, the employees, their shareholders, their partners, their customers, those play a role. Because if I have to bribe you to get a job, dude, and that's the only way I'm going to maintain my shareholders, either I run out of business or I bribe you. The options are 2. Then I'll run out of a business and then there will be a synopsis written about my company just because I stood for something.
Let me ask then, as a parting shot, this is not, I don't expect an
I was about to throw you out anyways.
So I'll throw myself out. But question is, why are the people who are actually in the arena, people who are actually building, not saying anything? That is what I don't like to see. And I just hope that can change. Because a lot of people writing synopsis haven't built shit. Like, they haven't
built anything.
Like, you ask them what they're... whatever they're writing doesn't have a head or a tail. So I question a lot because of that.
What you mean.
I'd really love to hear more stories of people who are actually building, whether it worked or it didn't work.
What you get a lot of times is, people who are actually building things that obviously don't have that much time.
No, I think it's just judgment, because even some of the things I've said in this podcast, if you distribute it well, the internet might come for me. That.
Okay, then if they come for you, it's fine. I hope they don't come for us.
And when I mean the internet will come for you, the thing for me is that most of it's a silence culture. Like, you will be silenced for having a contrary opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I have been in a situation where the consequence of standing for my principle means that the louder voice in the room will make me look like the devil. But I stood for my principle. So if you really think about it, most as Tesh is saying, but you see, we are here, we are talking about it, and I think probably will inspire more people to talk about these things. So I think it's just that culture of, we have a lot of opportunists, people want to be relevant, they want to make a comment on everything. But I just think there are, exactly, I think they are just, it gets to a time when the people who really, really care about learning and discovery, or these open conversations can be. From an entrepreneurial point of view, entrepreneurs need to be honest with themselves. What mistakes did you make? Learn from those mistakes. Have a value system so that at least we are not talking about fraud. You see, when you're talking about fraud and you're trying to come with this PR cosmetics to get rid of it, that's something else. Yeah. But if there was no ill intention, you did everything right, learn from your mistakes. Maybe you didn't have the right market fit. Maybe you didn't have. Then being honest with yourself provides a template for the next generation. If we are not being honest with ourselves, we fill the internet with a lot of PR, and nobody's learning anything from it.
And I think just to wrap this up, because we're having to throw Tesh out now, right? Okay. But I think it's quite good what you said, because in the end as well, if you're thinking about it, freedom of speech also requires us to be open and honest with one another, and to be able to have opinions which are maybe conflicting or contrary, but still have that conversation about it to understand the other person's perception and experience, and then maybe learn from it. Right? Maybe take what I like, abandon what I don't like, and then you can grow more, because that's how all of us grow, by hearing each other out, by learning from one another, or by just falling flat on our faces ourselves.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you mentioned that entrepreneurs, we all do this for a different reason. So there's somebody who's comfortable starting a small business, profitable from day one. And there's another one who has big dreams and wants to create thousands of jobs. Their paths and their ways of doing things are different, but all of them are needed in the ecosystem. So we just need to respect each other, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Yeah.